A Letter to Myself with Joel Chua.
Thanks so much for your company, as always. You know, many of our guests on this program share about life-changing experiences. Now, perhaps the most life-changing of experiences is a near-death one. Our guest today had to confront her own mortality even before she turned 30. Now, although she's thankfully recovered, it was a stark experience, as you can imagine, that caused her to re-evaluate her priorities and start thinking seriously about the inevitable. She left a job and started a company to help others plan for their elderhood and beyond in a more comprehensive way. The founder and CEO of Immortalize, Regina Tan. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Joel, and good evening to everyone here.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, Regina. So something very serious and significant happened to you when you were in your late 20s. Could you share with us a little bit more about what happened?
Yeah, sure. So prior to starting Immortalize, I was actually a journalist at Bloomberg. So I was in Beijing. I was based in Beijing. I was based in Hong Kong. And like many young people, you don't really think about death. And so I was living a great life in Hong Kong, you know, going for fine dining and things like that. And then one moment I was living a great life and the next I actually fell sick. So it was very drastic. It wasn't like, you know, a slow illness kind. It was next week I was hospitalized. So that's kind of where I was thrown into chaos because all of a sudden, you know, when you have never thought about planning for death and suddenly you had to, the kind of things you need to know, it throws any young person apart. So I guess that's kind of the trigger point. Yeah.
When you say you fell sick, could you give us a sense of how serious the condition was?
So I actually had kidney issues. It's something called nephrotic syndrome. Basically, the inability for your body to, for me wise, is inability to retain proteins in the body. So what was happening is that I was losing a lot of muscles in the body and my body started bloating. So one of my friends actually described how I look as I look like a tree trunk because your body basically replaces the muscles with a lot of water. Yeah, so that's kind of how I look like at then.
Wow. Okay. So obviously this required hospitalization. How long were you in the hospital for?
Actually, not too long, because I was really hospitalized to basically take a sample of my kidney to see what kind of treatment was good for me. I mean, fortunately for me, there were treatments that I was very receptive to, so it wasn't a worst case scenario. But I think what was noteworthy was prior to the diagnosis, or during the diagnosis, I actually got shingles. I think, you know, we were just chatting about the low point in life and stuff. And I think that moment when I had the kidney issue and because the immunity dropped and I developed shingles, and I remember this one very clear moment where I was in the office, I was in so much pain that I actually went to the washroom and I was crying. And I'm not a person who cries easily, but it was so painful that I felt like that was the moment where I felt, oh my God, if I actually faint right now and just pass away, no one would know. And I haven't done a lot of things in life. And that moment that I was in the washroom was where a lot of life's events flashback.
That one moment.
Yes.
A lot of people say that, you know, there's that point in time where, like you just shared, you know, life just flashes past your eyes.
Yeah.
And that was it for you in that washroom?
Yes, correct. Which is really funny because the scene was the washroom. And I know it sounds cliche, but I think like what many people say, you know, the things that you think about just before you die, you know, are not the kind of things that, you know, you thought you care about on a normal basis.
Yes. So what were the things that flashed past before your eyes?
Yeah. So
at that point in time.
Let's say, okay, what I was expecting would be my near-death flashback. So I'm naturally a very competitive person. So I've lived my life competing with others. So like, you know, if my friends are making more money than me, I will be, you know, okay, how can I make more money? If my friends are having kids or getting married. So you always have this kind of competition, especially in a society like Singapore where we're very competitive. But so at that moment in time, you know, what I think about, it's not, hey, someone else is living a better life, or hey, I am living a better life than someone else. You don't. You actually think about the things that you didn't do. I think that's number one. Of course, you think about your loved ones, you know, and being overseas, you know, to be honest, I don't really think about them that much, especially when you're younger.
Yep, absolutely,
but at that moment in time, they are all I care about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first thing you said is, you thought about things you did not do, you had not yet accomplished. What was that thing that you thought about that you had not accomplished?
Okay, so I think to give you some context, I was in a great job, very comfortable. So there were many things that I wanted to do when I was younger. For example, I wanted to be an astronaut. I actually went to Australia to study, thinking that I would do astrophysics and become an astronaut, but I didn't. Okay, not that. More because I changed my degree and chased money instead. Because you can't really make a lot of money then in Singapore studying astrophysics. So that was more the kind of perspective.
Right.
And there were many things. For example, I always wanted to. So I've always been an entrepreneur club in school.
Okay.
So I've always thought I would start a business. But when you're in a very comfortable job that pays you well, you don't want to take that risk. I was like, but startup is not easy. It's really tough and things like that.
You've got too much to lose.
Yes, correct. When you have a lot to lose, you tend not to take risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thankfully, you recovered fully eventually, right? What was life like after you fully recovered? You more mental space to consider the experience that you had just endured.
Yeah. So actually, after I recovered, before starting Immortalize, I went on, of course, a travel holiday.
Yeah.
To me, you go into the mindset that, hey, I want to spend all my money. What if I just, pass away again next? Because while I've recovered, this remains an illness that is like a ticking time bomb. You never know when it might relapse. So in the first year of just recovering, I actually went a lot of holidays. I actually took up a job in a hedge fund.
Okay.
Yeah, so because that was also another thing that I always wanted to do. And I basically take a low pay and make myself get in. But when I got in, I kind of realized that what I thought I wanted in life has changed. So in the past, it's always about making money. So I always wanted to be in a hedge fund to make a lot of money. But when I was really there and with that new experience in life, money does not mean the same to me anymore.
So what took the place of money then for you?
The meaning in what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was more about, yes, of course, when I quit my job and came back to Singapore to start Immortalize, I still want to make money, that's just a part of life. But I don't want to just make money for the sake of it, but I want to enjoy Mondays. I want to do the things I love. I want to be value adding to the meaning of my life through time. And I think, especially like I said, now that I know that I'm on a constant ticking time bomb, I want to make sure that I don't wake up on Sundays hating Mondays. I love my job and I want to go to my job. So every day to me, it's an excitement, a fulfilling event, and something meaningful that I'm doing for society as well.
That's beautiful. And I love the way you conceptualize it as a yardstick to whether or not how much we love our jobs, whether or not we love or we hate Mondays, especially Mondays.
Yeah.
All right. So the idea to start Immortalize, first of all, tell us about Immortalize. What exactly does Immortalize do?
Right. Okay. So Immortalize is actually an elderhood marketplace and information provider. So it's elderhood because for us, elderhood includes legacy planning. So planning for death and mental incapacity. It includes elder care. So for example, if you've heard the government talk about advanced care plan, that's part of it, as well as planning for what you do retirement. I think one of the things that most of your audience wouldn't know is that elderhood actually starts when you're 50. So by the time you're 50, you're a young senior. And most people don't know, right? They just live life thinking that, I'm never going to be old, but hey, 50 is going to be very soon. But
it hits you before you know it.
Correct. Yeah. So that's kind of the elderhood concept. Marketplace is really all about, it's just like a Shopee, Lazada, where we gather all the providers that provided services to this category of things and put them in a location that is easy for people to find. So this was actually one of the key reasons why I quit my job, because when I was planning for my death, I didn't know the difference between all the different providers of will, what kind of documents do I need and things like that. So that goes to my third part, which is the information provider. So we actually created a digital concierge to guide people through planning for their legacy, because most people have no idea where to start, what kind of documents they need. So that's kind of where why we are called the elderhood marketplace and information provider.
Right.
And the trigger for it, so like I mentioned, was because when I was a journalist, and one of the things that we are trained to do is actually to take a lot of information, identify key points, and connect the dots. But even for me, it was very hard to do death planning because there's so many things. And you usually have to make decisions in a very short period of time if you haven't done early preparation.
Right, especially when you're in a state of emotional vulnerability as well.
Yes, and and that point, I was in pain. I was like, but I need to kind of like do my death planning in case something happens. What's going to happen of my parents, and things like that. So I recovered, and I felt that as Singaporeans and in general, the world grows a lot more sophisticated in terms of how they want to age. This is actually a gigantic market that has been shunned by a lot of technology startups and things like that. There are still creativity in there, but compared to, say, your AI or your blockchain, it's a lot less it's a lot more shunned in terms of investment money. So that's where I saw the huge opportunity as Singapore becomes an aging society.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of planning, legacy planning, financial planning for our seniorhood, our elderhood, these are not new concepts,
Yeah.
right? So what is the innovation that Immortalize brings to the marketplace?
Yeah. So actually, when we were registered in 2018, because I needed a reason to talk to lawyers, talk to people, they're not going to talk to you if you don't have a company. But we actually launched the platform in 2019. So we took about a year or two or so, even before the 2018, to actually do a lot of research. So when we first started, we thought we want to be an online will. That's kind of what we do. But the more I understand what the market has, as well as what people need, I realize the problem is not with more solution. It's about the information gap between the users and the people providing the services. So most users most people, general public, has no idea where to start, what to do, what's the difference between a $99 will and a $5,000 will. So there's no central location where they can identify all this, and trying to gather this information yourself is very hard. So that's kind of where we come in as innovation, not innovation per se, but we basically be the central information data directory to gather all this information. I think we are actually one of the first globally to do that across the full elderhood ecosystem, not just in legal, and not just in medical, but helping people connect the dots between all these legal medical jargons.
Right. So a one-stop shop in a sense.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
A one-stop platform.
Yeah.
Do you provide your own services? I mean, these will writings and other services that one would need to look into in terms of their elderhood and legacy planning. Is it yours, or are you consolidating services that other people provide? So
Immortalize main business is about information transparency. We try not to create any services or products if the market has it. If the market has it, why am I doing exactly the same thing? My job is just to make sure it's easy for the users or the mass public to find what they need, to know why they need certain things. So that's where my business is focused on, breaking down the information barrier to help people make this whole planning journey at a breeze.
Right.
Yeah.
So you spoke about will planning, doing up your will. And I think that's, for most people thinking about legacy planning, that's front and center. But there are other elements and aspects of elderhood and legacy planning as well. What are some of the other aspects that people don't usually think about that are also important based on what you've discovered?
Yeah. So legacy planning, like I mentioned earlier, there's two components. One, you plan for if you die. The other one, which we champion as more important than planning for death, is mental incapacity.
Yeah. Lasting power of attorney?
Yeah. That's one document. Okay, so 5 years ago when I was talking about lasting power attorney, LPA, everyone thinks I'm a scammer, because nobody really hears about lasting power attorney, LPA. But when I was evaluating all the kind of different documents or products and services that we should be putting on the platform, I saw LPA and I was like, why isn't anyone talking about this? Why hasn't my parents or whoever done this? It's just the most obvious thing to do. So we started championing, but the great thing for us that the government did a fantastic push around 2 years back, and that really drive our Immortalize credibility and as well as visibility. So lasting power attorney is one that we start these days because the government has doing a lot of campaigning for it. But to be honest, the lasting power attorney LPA only helps you decide who gets to make decision for you. But everything else, for example, how should they be making decisions? Right? It's not being discussed. And that's kind of where for medical side, it's covered by the advanced care plan.
Yes.
And then for the other parts, you could all incorporate it into something called a letter of wishes, which Immortalize has on the platform to help people create.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it all just about in the worst case scenario or when the inevitable happens? Right?
Yeah.
Or are there other aspects of the ecosystem surrounding that as well?
Okay. So what you realize is that when we help people with planning for end of life, we always start from the end, death and mental incapacity, because what we realize, just one thing that I always tell people, right? So where I've learned what's most important to me is during the near-death experience, right? But I cannot put everybody through near-death experience. But by helping you think about those near-death experiences, I can help you realize what's important to you in life. And so once you have that, you know what's important, what you want to achieve in life, then we go back and plan for your elder care as well as your retirement experiences.
Thanks so much for staying with us here on A Letter to Myself on CNA 938. We're continuing our conversation with the founder and CEO of Immortalize, Regina Tan. Immortalize, as Regina was sharing with us, it's a one-stop legacy planning, elderhood planning marketplace. And she was sharing with us earlier how her journey, which involved a close encounter with her own prospective mortality when she was not yet 30, really reshaped her priorities in life and led her on this journey to start Immortalize. Regina, as you reflect on your journey, if you could write a letter to your younger self based on the most valuable lessons you've learned through this journey, what would be the most important messages in it?
Right. So I've prepared 3.
Yes.
So I'm going to basically just share a little bit. I think growing up in Singapore, we are always competitive. Growing up in Singapore, we're always competitive. You know, we are in an environment where you always strive to be the top. You always strive to be better than elsewhere. Someone else, you know, you get parents, you know, pressure, peer pressure. There's always this stress of being better and being competitive. And personally, for me, I'm a very competitive person. So I've led my 20s, you know, before the near-death experience.
Yes,
really,
we can hear the energy in your voice as well.
Yeah.
You know, there's this passion and energy that we feel in your voice.
Yeah. But the truth is that when I had that near-death experience, all these things doesn't matter. It didn't even occur to my mind whether, you know, my life scorecard, was I better than anyone else? No, it doesn't. Because at that point in time, you really, truly just only think about the people that you care about. It doesn't matter, you know, day to day, you think about the people whom you are competing with. But near death, those people don't matter at all.
Right.
So that's one thing. And
so you it was from competition to care.
yeah.
Right, the priority switched. It
Yes.
was the people that you were competing with.
Yeah.
But at that moment, when it crystallized for you, it was about the people whom you cared for.
Correct. So before the near-death experience, it was all about, you know, I'm constantly thinking about those people. How do I get better and things like that. But during the near-death experience, they do not exist in your mind space at all. So, you know, and the things that came to my mind was, hey, the time that I didn't spend with my grandmother, who passed away last year. You know, all these kind of things that you didn't do, those are the things that you truly regret. And if I have a chance to tell myself, my younger self, hey, don't need to stress up, chill. Don't have to be so stressed out about competing with others, because at the end of the day, they don't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for someone who is so naturally competitive as you are, right? How do you rein in that urge to be competitive, right? And what do you replace it with?
Okay. I think bringing back to today's context, I mean, as a startup, you're constantly competing as well, right? There will be there's a lot of competition out there. There'll be people bringing you down. And for me, I find a lot of comfort in knowing that, in focusing that whatever I'm doing, it's not to be, it's to bring value to the customers that we serve. So like, for example, you know, people always ask me, oh, aren't you afraid that people might copy your idea? So if copying my idea actually helps everyone, it means I've already done something great in my life's scorecard. And for us, we are constantly focusing on how do we help people, you know, make the whole experience of planning for their death, mental incapacity, legacy, elderhood, a lot easier. And I think that vision helped me stay clear from constantly looking at what competitors are doing. Because I think that's an obsession that that doesn't come if you're passionate about. So if you're passionate about what you do, you're focusing on how you can help people. Those things doesn't bother you as much.
Right. It's a different definition of success.
Yeah.
What it means to be successful.
Yeah.
Right. It's no longer just the bottom line as a business and
Yeah.
entrepreneur, but it's about how many people actually benefit in a meaningful way.
Yeah. And I think the truth is that if you're focusing on helping people or bringing value to who you are serving, naturally you will become better than others, because you're focused on helping people solve their pain point, whereas others might be looking at what everyone else is doing. So we are always ahead of the curve in that sense, and bringing out new innovative features that shocks the market in some sense.
All right. So the first message to your younger self, it's not so much about competing with people.
Yeah.
It's about the people that you care for.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So that will be the first message.
Yes.
And the second message, I think this really resonate with me when I was younger. I'm always constantly trying to fit it. Yeah, I think that's what everyone like.
Yeah.
Recently, I gave my niece an advice because everyone else in her school has this has a watch, the watch that you can call people, or a phone, and she wanted one just because, not because she needs it, but because everyone else has it. So I was giving her this big talk on, hey, it's important to just be yourself and not try to do things so that you fit in with someone else. And I think most young people have this issue of finding their own identity. Yeah, especially when you're young, because you're just trying to figure things out. And so that will be something that I would tell, if I could go back and tell myself, don't stress about trying to be like everyone else. It's okay to be yourself.
How did that find expression in you? This idea that I wanted to, like for so many people, this instinct to want to fit in. What was that like for you?
So I think the society has a herding mentality.
Yes.
And to me, I think the moment where I truly could be an independent thinker was actually an experience I had when I was in Beijing.
Okay.
So for example, when I was studying, Kim Jong-il, the North Korean the father, the leader. Yeah. So when I was studying in Australia, he's being portrayed as this evil man that needs to die for world peace. And then when I was working in Beijing, I remember very clearly watching TV, and he was being portrayed as this really kind man that you could go up and pinch his face. And that was when I realized that, it doesn't matter where you are, you're constantly being brainwashed by different beliefs, preferences, and things like that. And I think that experience was what opened my mind to what it means to have an independent mind. Yeah. So, and it's okay to have an opinion that's different from people, because everyone gets swayed in different ways by the environment they are in. So that was when I think I started to be okay to not have to follow others.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing with us that experience and that perspective as well. So the second message to your younger self, it's okay to not fit in.
Yes, to be yourself.
To be yourself.
Yeah.
And to pursue your own independence of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the last one, I think it will be more from my entrepreneur experience. You hear a lot of people with a lot of great passion, great idea, and then you hear a lot of advice, on, if you have a great passion and great idea, you should just go all in. I think I'm going to be like, given that I've been through that all in stage, I'm actually going to tell people who wants to, for example, start their own business or do something risky, don't go all in at the beginning. Okay, because when you go all in, when it's just an idea, so for example, if you're starting a business with an idea, right? If you go all in with just an idea, but no proof of concept, no traction, nothing. It's just an idea. You're going to struggle a lot, because entrepreneurship is not hard. Being a startup is extremely tough. You get a lot of rejections, and also, most importantly, if you go all in, it means that a lot of decisions that you make as a business owner, it's not based on what's good for the business. It's based on what's good for you to survive. Yeah, so I think
you're in survival mode when
correct.
You need to meet your basic needs.
Yes,
short
so
term.
you might actually give up a lot of long-term things that are good for the company, so that you are okay in the short term. And if that's the case, you rather, maybe you do, while you're working on your job, start something on the side, slowly build it up, so you have time, resources, and to actually perfect the idea before you go all in. At some point, you got to go all in, but just not like, I have one great idea, and then you just go all in.
Okay, so there are two different maybe philosophical perspectives on entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
Some entrepreneurs will say that you got to burn the bridge, because once you burn the bridge, that spurs you forward. There's no looking back.
Yeah.
But for you, you're giving us the alternative perspective.
Yes. So that was what I thought, and that was what I adopted.
Yeah.
And I learned that if you're truly passionate about something, having that additional financial resources, it's going to help you increase the odds of you producing something great, as opposed to you rushing. So this brings back to one of the advice that one of my ex-boss says that resonates with me even till today. Take your time to do it right, rather than rush and get it wrong.
Okay, repeat that. That sounds very very quote-worthy.
Yeah. So take your time to get it right, rather than rush and get it wrong.
Okay, it sounds so basic, but at the same time, it's something that I think would be very valuable to many people in tough situations.
Yeah.
Right? Slow down, pause,
Yes.
think, plan, which is precisely what Immortalize is urging people to do as well, right? Plan. Right. So those three messages, to your younger self, right? It's not so much about the competition. It's really about the people you care for, right? The second is it's okay to not fit in. Pursue your own independence of mind. That's what makes you you. And the third message that you just shared with us, from an entrepreneurial point of view, there's the perspective that you got to burn your bridge so that the only way is for it. But there's an alternative perspective that is also equally valid, which is what you've just shared with us, that take things slow, plan, have it maybe as a side hustle first. And then when you're ready, then go all in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to go in at some point. Just don't rush into it.
We're continuing our chat with our guest today. She is Regina Tan, founder and CEO of Immortalize, a one-stop platform marketplace for elderhood and legacy planning. Regina has been sharing with us the most valuable lessons she's learned through her journey in that letter to her younger self. We're going to time travel a little bit now, Regina, from the past to the present, and then later on we'll talk about the future as well. You're currently working on a project that's very relevant to what we are talking about actually this evening, writing letters to yourself. Tell us more about this project that you're working on.
Right. So, as you know, Immortalize is about legacy planning. So, in the common sense, it will be more about for example, how are you going to pass on your money and things like that. But if you really Google the word for legacy, it also means, what's your legacy? What's your meaning in life, what's you passing on and things like that.
Right. How people will remember you.
Correct. So besides money and assets, we were also exploring, what other things can people leave on so that their legacy lives on. So, one of it was, of course, words of wisdom or So that's kind of where we had the concept of a time capsule where people could just write messages to either their future self or to the future generation. For example, a grandchildren who's still now young, but you want to send it 20, 30 years later when they're much older to give them some context of what you have learned today the wisdom that you hope to pass on to future generation. So that's kind of our family tree that we're building. But as part of it is the time capsule concept.
What form does this take? Is it a physical time capsule or is it a digital, virtual thing?
Yeah, so it's a digital one because for everything, we are a tech company after all, we're always looking at digital. And generally speaking, something physical could be, decompose, could spoil, could go missing. Digital is a lot easier to manage for us in that sense. So it's a digital time capsule, okay, that can be passed on through generations.
How does it happen? How does the passing on happen?
Yeah. So for now, it's a very fun so it's actually only launched last month. So it's pretty much in a prototype version. It's very straightforward. Basically, you need to have an email first. So I will write a message and I will time it to send to this person at this email in 20 years' time. But the bigger picture version of it is that on Immortalize itself, eventually we have a family tree structure where these messages could be accessed by the family dynasty in future, like the hierarchy. So that's kind of how we intend to pass on the messages in future. But for now, it's a very simple mechanism where you're using just email.
Right. And of course, we talk about legacy planning for individuals. A service like this requires legacy planning for your business as well, because you're talking about, passing on a message to someone 30, 40 years down the road. Right?
Yeah. So for us, one of the things that I always tell my team is that you need to be indispensable. You need to make yourself indispensable to the organization. So everything that we do, it's about automation. There's a lot of talk about AI, the rise of the robots. The truth is that everything we do, while we are at the very beginning stage, is very human, but everything has to be automated in future. So that's kind of where we feel Immortalize has a higher chance of living through time because it's not based on the human knowledge of whether someone knows or that someone still exists in the company or not. It's not, because every single person in the organization has to create a standard operating procedure or automation such that they are replaceable if they're not around by this automation or this standard operating procedure. So that's kind of how we build the company in terms of making sure that hopefully, this company can last through generations because it's not independent of any one person.
Yeah. And also, I think there's also an echo to, the service that you're providing in terms of legacy planning, because none of us are permanent.
Yeah.
The inevitable will happen to all of us one day. And in a corporate organizational context, it's the same thing as well.
Yeah.
at some point someone will leave at some point in time, and it's important to plan organizationally what the legacy is also, right? Operationally as well. Yeah. So it's about writing letters to the future self and or to future generations. So, you're obviously a leader who practices what she preaches, right? We'll come to that letter now to your future self.
Okay.
Right? If you could write that letter to your future self now, what would be the most valuable message in that?
Actually, for me, okay, I think it's a little bit less words, but more pictures, memories, things that evoke memories, or for example, words that evoke memories that I want to immortalize, if I can use the pun here, that I would like to immortalize. Because, for example, like my colleague, I was having a discussion with my colleague, and basically we were talking about how, looking back at an old picture of her parents today reminds her to appreciate her parents now, because she have seen by comparing the photo, she knows how much her parents have grown older, and that the time is not kind of like unlimited in that sense. So I think for me wise, I would, in my letter to my future, I will be keeping a lot of images, a lot of words, a lot of discussions, a lot of events that could remind me of what happened today, so that I could appreciate the future, the now, a lot more.
Right.
Yeah.
What is it about the now that you think you'll be appreciating most when in the future you look back at the letter that you've written to yourself?
Actually, the truth is that I learned a lot from my grandmother in that sense, because like I said, she just passed away a year back. And looking back, there's many things that I regret not doing with her. For example, not spending more time, not bringing her out for walks, and just simple things like that. And now with this memory, so for example, if my future, I have this new insights now. I actually use my grandmother's experience to make sure that I spend a lot of time with my family, with my parents, and make an effort. Even though I'm very busy day to day and stuff, I will make an effort to just call. It doesn't take much to just call. There's no excuse to not just call and video chat, even though we live in different places and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of where, that's the now that I want to appreciate. And I think, when I was, my grandma was sick, or was at the end of life, there were many weeks that I was really busy, and I treated like she might pass away tomorrow.
Right.
And that made me say, okay, you know what? Let's just take 2 hours and go and just talk to her, visit her. That it's going to make me not regret if anything happens. And I'm glad that practice persisted, because the day that she passed away, I've done what I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful memory with us. Regina Tan has been sharing with us her journey and the most valuable lessons that she's gained from this journey. She is the founder and CEO of Immortalize, which is a marketplace for legacy and elderhood planning. If you'd like to find out more, the website is Immortalize, that's Immortalize with a Z.io.
Yes, thank you for that.